Welcome to chapter 12. This chapter is on sexual development throughout the life. So let's start by looking at a historical perspective brought to us by Sigmund Freud. So Freud's theory is centered around what is called the psychosexual stages. And Freud proposes that there are 5 stages of personality development, and each of the stages are tied to the sexual development of the child. So each stage occurs at a certain age range in the person's life, and there is a focus of libido or sexual center that the child is interested in at each stage. And at each stage, there is a conflict that the child should overcome in order to develop, quote unquote, normally, according to Freud. So, if a person does not successfully resolve the conflict at any given stage, then they become fixated in that stage. So, according to Freud, a failure to successfully pass through or resolve conflicts at each stage is what results in these fixations. And so a person becomes kind of stuck in a stage or fixated in a stage if their needs have been ignored or overindulged. So these fixations can result in personality traits and behaviors that are associated with that stage that they're kind of fixated or stuck in. So the first stage is the oral stage, and this stage usually occurs between birth and anywhere from 12 to 18 months. The infant's center of pleasure is their mouth. So you'll notice that a lot of children are constantly putting things in their mouth, toys, pacifiers, just anything they can get their hands on. And Freud said that the major developmental crisis or goal here is to successfully wean the child off of breastfeeding. And so, in order to do that, the child needs to be fed an appropriate amount of time, an appropriate length of time. So, if the child is overfed or underfed or fed too long or not fed long enough, then it's possible that they can develop a oral fixation or become fixated in the oral stage. And a person who is fixated in the oral stage will have a oral fixation as an adult in which they will be likely to overeat, talk a lot, smoke cigarettes, bite their nails, chew on pens. And Freud even said that they are more likely to have a bitingly sarcastic sense of humor or be willing to swallow anything, in other words, meaning they're gullible. The next stage is the anal stage, and this is when the child is between the ages of 12 and 18 months and continues on till around 3 years. And so the anal stage is when the child's pleasure center is on their anus. And so at this time, their major conflict is about toilet training. So if they are not successful in toilet training, then they become anally fixated. And there's 2 results of anal fixation. There's the anal expulsive personality and the anal retentive personality. So the latter is a lot more popular than the former, but the anal expulsive personality is a person that's fixated in the anal stage who is messy, destructive, hostile, loud, demanding. And then the anal retentive personality is a person fixated in the anal stage who is neat, fussy, stingy, stubborn, organized. And so the reason for these outcomes, according to Freud, is that when a child is in the anal stage, they're sort of obsessed with what their anus can do, particularly as it relates to defecating or going poop. And so when they are toilet trained and they're being overindulged, meaning they're being pushed a lot do you have to go to the bathroom? Do you have to go to the bathroom? Come on, let's go to the bathroom. Then this can be overwhelming and overbearing, and the child kind of thinks to themselves like, hey, this is my anus that I'm real into right now. I'm in charge of this thing. I'm going to decide when I'm going to go to the bathroom. And so their way of handling this is to hold in their feces, refuse to go. And this is what Freud says creates that anal retentive, uptight, a person who's neat and organized and fussy and stingy, and then a child who is not able to kind of show off the wonders of their anus because their parents aren't paying attention to them during toilet training. So it's kind of like they're going to the bathroom and the potty and no one cares, no one's paying attention. What you might see this child do is spread their feces around, defecate in areas where in the house where they shouldn't be, leave their feces in the toilet so that someone could see it. They're sort of starved for attention because they're so proud of their anus, but yet no one seems to be caring or paying attention. And so Freud said that that's what creates that anal expulsive personality, the person who's messy, destructive, hostile, demanding, needs attention, like look at me, look at me, look at me, because they were sort of starved of that attention when they were toilet training and were just astounded by all the magic that they could do with their anus and nobody cared. All right, and then the next stage, which is probably the most well-known stage of his psychosexual stages theory and is the most controversial and talked about, is the phallic stage. So the phallic stage, according to Freud, extends from 3 years to anywhere between 5 and 6 years old, and this is when the child's pleasure center is on their genitals. And so what Freud says is that the major conflict for males is called the Oedipus complex, and it's based off of Greek mythology, specifically a story of a man named Oedipus Rex who unknowingly killed his father, married his mother, and upon learning that his mother was his wife, stabbed his own eyes out. So the Oedipus complex, according to Freud, is the idea that all little boys in the phallic stage have this unconscious sexual attraction or desire for their mother. However, they are afraid that their father is going to figure out that they are attracted to their mother and, in retaliation, castrate them or cut off their penis. This creates what is known as castration anxiety, according to Freud. It's also been described in a more figurative sense, in which the fear of castration or castration anxiety is more the idea that you're repressing the strong desire towards your mother and therefore repressing your own masculinity, and this emasculation is what constitutes the feelings of castration or castration anxiety. At any rate, it is this castration anxiety, according to Freud, that leads the child to successfully resolve the Oedipus complex in the phallic stage, because according to Freud, the child kind of makes this plan to prevent dad from finding out about his attraction towards mom, where he is going to become best friends with dad and kind of throw him off, and so the dad has no idea that he's attracted to mom. But through this plan, what happens accidentally is the son starts to realize that he has a lot in common with dad, and dad's pretty cool, and he decides that mom is dad's, and dad can keep mom, and he'll search for another woman when he's of age. And so this process of understanding that dad is cool and that he likes dad and they have a lot in common is called identification. So identification is really the key to resolving the Oedipus complex, according to Freud. And the female equivalent of the Oedipus complex is the Electra complex. So this is the crisis that they have to resolve in the phallic stage. And it's based on the Greek mythology story of Electra, who plotted with her brother to kill her mother and stepfather in revenge for them killing Electra's father. So according to Freud, the Electra complex is every little girl's unconscious wish for their father, a sexual attraction towards their father. And basically the way that the Electra complex gets resolved is a female child realizes that she does not have a penis through playing a game of I'll show you mine if you show me yours with another kid, or seeing her brother's penis in the bathtub, or playing doctor or whatever. She realizes that she doesn't have a penis, and she concludes that her mother must have found out that she has this attraction towards her father, and cut off her penis. And so she becomes angry and resentful towards her mother because of this perceived castration. And at this point, she also develops what Freud called penis envy, which is the desire to get the penis back or to have the penis, which really fuels the attraction towards their father even more because they want their father's penis, according to Freud. And so, in the same way, the little boy devises a plan to throw dad off about his attraction towards mom. The little girl devises a plan to throw dad or mom off by teaming up with mom and hanging out with mom a lot. And then, accidentally, through that process, she realizes that mom's pretty cool. She actually likes mom. They have a lot in common, and identification occurs. And this is what resolves the Electra complex. So Freud said that one telltale sign of a man fixated in the phallic stage because they never resolved the Oedipus complex is a mama's boy. So the idea is that they still have this attraction towards their mom and they're unconscious and they're not aware of it, and it's being kind of manifested into this really close, almost abnormal relationship with their mom as an adult. And then for women that are fixated in this stage and never resolved the Electra complex, you might see these women marrying older men, men that remind them of their father or have things in common with their father. And the next stage is the latency stage. It's between the ages of 5 and 6 years to adolescence. And this is when the sexual urges kind of lie dormant. They put their sexual concerns aside. Some people theorize that it might be because of all of the traumatic thoughts and feelings and emotions that they had in the previous 3 stages. But at any rate, the reason that this is of importance for our purposes is that it's in the latency stage that we really develop defense mechanisms, according to Freud. And so some evidence socially for the latency stage might be the fact that when children are in this age, we tend to see them think that the other sex has cooties, no boys allowed, things like that. And then the genital stage should last from adolescence to death, and this is when a person's focus of libido or their pleasure center goes back on their genitals. And the major developmental goal or crisis or conflict here is to reach full sexual maturity. And if all of the stages were successfully completed, then the person should be sexually matured and mentally healthy and have a quote-unquote normal personality. So we'll start by talking about sexuality in childhood, which for many children starts out with their kind of own form of masturbation. And childhood sexuality is an uncomfortable and awkward topic for many people to discuss. And in fact, in Western culture, parents typically will not discuss any sexual behavior found in their kids. And people often think that children have no sexual behaviors or responses until puberty. But the truth is that the psychological and emotional aspects are usually not present until the teen years, but physical responses are present. And research shows that children do engage in sex play, like playing doctor, for example, and masturbation. And this does not affect sexual behaviors or attitudes later in life and is considered normal, healthy, and common. In fact, male infants get an erection within 24 hours of birth, and females experience vaginal lubrication within 24 hours of birth. So 5-month-old infants get between 5 and 40 erections per day. And research shows that children begin to touch their genitals when their motor skills develop. This behavior decreases with age until puberty, so a 2-year-old will do it more than a 5-year-old will. But parents need to inform their child that this is a private activity. However, psychologists recommend that children are not punished for touching their genitals because research shows that this leads to unhealthy attitudes about sex later. And so the first signs of masturbation usually start between the ages of 2 and 3, and between 3 and 5, they can begin to understand that their genitals being touched by themselves feels good, and it is possible for them to have orgasms. So adult memories of childhood masturbation between the ages of 6 and 10 are somewhat common. 43% of males say they remember masturbating between the ages of 6 and 10, and 34% of females have a recollection of this as well. And when mothers are asked about childhood masturbation, about 30% of mothers of boys say that they observed their child between the age of 2 and 10 masturbating, and mothers of girls, 21% of them said that they observed their child masturbating between the ages of 2 and 10. So all of this is normal. However, it is important to pay attention to red flags. So some signs of a potential problem include a child has overly early understanding of the two-sidedness of sex acts. If masturbation becomes compulsive and interferes with other activities, if the child simulates intercourse with another child, if any penetration with another child is involved, if masturbation is intrusive or painful, if the activity increases much above the original level, if there is mouth to genital contact between two children, or if you feel your child is particularly sad, you should see your doctor right away. Between the ages of 3 and 7, children become interested in other people's bodies as well, and they begin to be aware of their own gender identity and are curious about the physical differences in genders. They may want to play doctor or other games to see genitals. They also have an interest in their parents' bodies and may try to see their parents' genitals. There's no evidence of childhood sex play having negative consequences for later sexual adjustment. However, parents should approach the situation gently and not have any extreme emotional responses. So if you look on the slide here, there are some tips for what parents should do if they find their child engaging in sex play. First thing to do is think about it. We have to teach our children what is appropriate in every context, in every situation. We have to teach them not to throw rocks inside of a house, and we have to teach them what is appropriate in terms of sexuality and touching, for example. We also want to stay calm, so we would make a statement to the child. If you were to catch your child involved in a sex act, you would make a statement like, hey, let's put our clothes back on, and then redirect those children to another activity. Would you like to do a puzzle? And then monitor their interaction with each other from there on out. We also want to pay attention. So we want to look for cues that they are ready for more sex education, and we always want to educate our children about sexuality at a level that is appropriate for their age. We also want to read about it with our child, so we can find a book for your child or for a child about sexuality, again, that is age appropriate. And take note, if you feel like the behavior is abnormal, then you want to tell a doctor right away. So, when childhood sex play is not normal, there can be signs of sexual abuse that need to be considered in context and based on the individual. So some potential signs of sexual abuse include sex play with children that are more than 4 or 5 years apart, if there is aggression involved in the sex play, if a child has sleep problems or are withdrawing from friends and family, if they are portraying molestation themes in drawings or games, and if they have an adult-like vocabulary about sex. These could all be potential red flags that there might be some sexual abuse occurring. And so, like I've said before, if you are noticing these red flags, then they should be discussed with a doctor immediately. Okay, so as our sexuality continues to develop, we hit adolescence, which is defined as the period of life between the ages of approximately 10 and 19 years old. It's often a tumultuous time where we're really trying to find our identity. So we do a lot of self-identity seeking during this stage. And part of that involves teens awakening sexually, and they begin to experience the psychological, emotional, and sexual elements of love relationships. But teens receive confusing and mixed messages about sexuality. For example, some teens are encouraged to be abstinent and not talk to about sexual education. Research shows that 50% of teens that take a virginity pledge actually end up breaking it, and they are far less likely to use protection than non-pledgers. Research on abstinence-only programs shows no difference in sexual activity, sexual risk-taking, use of condoms, or knowledge of STI prevention. Also, research shows that the more teens know about sex, the more informed and healthy their choices will be. So, sex ed does not increase sexual behavior, but it does decrease teen pregnancy. So, let's watch a video clip now on the virginity or abstinence pledge.
But up next, does just say no work when it comes to teens and sex? Surprising insight into those popular chastity pledges coming up after this.
And we are back now at 7:43 with news that could surprise you when it comes to teenagers and sex. A new study reveals teens who took a pledge of abstinence were just as likely to have premarital sex as those who did not, and even less likely to use protection. Laura Berman is a sex therapist and educator. Laura, good morning to you.
Good morning.
You know, this goes against everything that you would assume to be true. What do you make of the results of this study?
Well, you know, it's disturbing because this is something the government has been spending $200 million on a year. Abstinence-based education, which it typically includes or often includes these virginity pledges. And what we now know, or at least has been proven in a large-scale study that matched teens together, so there were similar on 100 different characteristics except for the fact that they took this virginity pledge versus not taking the virginity pledge. And what they're finding is that these virginity pledges don't delay the age of onset of first sexual encounter. They don't change the number of sexual partners a person is going to have in their lifetime. What it seems to change is the likelihood that they're going to protect themselves from pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases. And the ones who took the virginity pledge were less likely to protect themselves, most likely because they weren't being armed with the information they needed.
So because they didn't understand how to use condoms or anything about birth control, then they didn't have them available to them when they needed them.
Right. It was absolutely that they didn't understand. It's that they had taken the pledge, so they had tuned out when they were presented with this information. And very importantly, not only were they not given the information, comprehensive sex education also includes tools for children or for adolescents, ideally, about how to negotiate for condom use, how to deal with it when your partner doesn't want to use one or says they don't have one, or troubleshooting so that if and when you find yourself in a sexual situation, you know how to handle it, and you know how to protect yourself, and you know how to put your own health first and make those healthy sexual decisions. And this is something that it's exciting because the Obama administration is much more supportive of comprehensive sex education that obviously includes abstinence, but also doesn't put our heads in the sand about the realities of teenagers and feelings of infallibility and immortality that most teenagers have, and the strong sexual impulses that come with that age as well.
You know, one of the things that I found so interesting about this study was that after a year, 50% of the kids who took this pledge denied that they had ever taken it, and after 5 years, that number jumped to 84%. Is that collective amnesia?
That's right. Well, it points to the power of reverse peer pressure, and I think one of the premises of the virginity pledges is that it uses peer pressure to encourage maintaining virginity. But the problem is that because when they've looked at these pledges, kids who really take them, from the heart, not in some huge classroom or group encounter, tend to keep those pledges more, and that it makes sense that if you're in a huge group and everyone else is taking the pledge, you say, "Oh yeah, I take the pledge too." But then 5 years later, you're saying, what pledge? So it's really, I think first and foremost, parents should be the primary sex educator of their kids, and this is something that you can't leave to the schools, something that you have to impart your own values, have an ongoing conversation with your child about, and make sure that you don't leave out, that you understand that information does not mean permission. And that's the false premise that these abstinence-based educations, are built on.
Laura, there are those who are going to say, though, that there have been other studies in the past that have shown that kids who take this vow of virginity pledge, abstain from sex much longer. So what makes this study more reliable than studies that have come before it?
Well, this was a much more comprehensive study. They used much more complicated statistics than just like a simple regression analysis, which these prior studies have used. And most importantly, the prior studies did not match the teens on other variables. So they would compare pledgers and non-pledgers, but there would be no other similarities in terms of religious background, sexual attitudes, other social variables. In this study, the kids were compared on, they were similar on 100 different social, emotional variables. The main difference was that they took the pledge versus didn't take the pledge. And so we're really, in this study, looking at a comparison between like teens.
All right, Laura Berman, thank you so much for your insight this morning.
Thank you.
And up
Puberty plays a major role in our sexual development and is defined as a natural change in a child's body during early to middle childhood, during which secondary sex characteristics develop and boys begin to produce sperm and girls begin menstruation. So generally, puberty starts in boys between the ages of 11 to 16, and in girls, puberty starts somewhere between the ages of 8 and 16. And it starts with the pituitary gland releasing gonadotropin, and this is a hormone that creates internal and external changes associated with puberty. So the pituitary gland is a gland in the brain that at the onset of puberty releases hormones, like I had just mentioned, gonadotropin, that are necessary for the physical changes of puberty. And gonadotropin is a hormone released by the pituitary gland that signals the testes to release testosterone and the ovaries to release estrogen. And so the internal changes of puberty begin first. The testicles mature and begin to release testosterone. The prostate and seminal vesicles mature and become able to produce sperm, semen, ejaculation. And early ejaculations are generally something that occur through nocturnal emission, or what are sometimes called on the streets wet dreams, or masturbation. So early ejaculations will happen through nocturnal emission or masturbation, and they usually contain few sperm cells. However, these sperm cells could still make the person fertile, even though there's few of them. So in terms of the internal changes for girls, their ovaries mature, there's an increase in estrogen secretion, which builds up the uterine lining and then leads to menstruation. And so the beginning of menstruation, or a girl's first period, is referred to as menarche, and the average age for menarche is between 12 and 13. Generally, 1 year after menarche happens, the ovaries begin to produce mature eggs. However, it is possible for the girl to be fertile within that first year. So it's normal for periods to be irregular during the first year. They might skip months or vary in heaviness. Girls who experience early puberty are subject to unwanted sexual attention, where boys are usually praised as becoming men. And this is often referred to as the double standard of puberty, which is that typically it's more difficult for girls who go into puberty earlier because they're often called names or accused of being sexually promiscuous once they start developing breasts and hips, whereas when boys grow tall and get facial hair and are more muscular, usually they're kind of seen as like the man on campus, so to speak. And another term that you need to know are secondary sexual characteristics, which are things that I was just referring to with the double standard of puberty. So physical changes are that are not biologically related to reproduction that occur during puberty are referred to as secondary sexual characteristics. Things like body hair, growing, muscles, your voice getting deeper, things that are not necessary to create a life or to conceive a baby, but do seem to attract others, at least in terms of the way our animal brains work, are secondary sexual characteristics. However, secondary sexual characteristics, the development of them varies in sequence and timing from person to person. There is research showing that puberty is happening at an earlier and earlier age as time goes by, and there is some evidence that this might actually be somewhat dangerous. So let's watch a video clip now on whether or not early puberty is problematic.
Puberty is awkward enough for teenagers, but now puberty is starting to occur in children as young as first grade. What is happening here, and what should we do about it? Hey there, girls and boys. Trace here for DNews. In the mid-19th century, puberty didn't start until the later teen years. By the mid-20th century, it was preteen, and today the National Institutes of Health says it starts between the ages of 8 and 13 for girls and 9 and 14 for boys. But, and I do not say this too often, those numbers aren't really accurate. Research is showing puberty can start for African American girls as early as 6. Those girls are in first grade. We all learn puberty starts at different times for different individuals, but when it starts super early, like before age 7 or 8 for girls and before 9 for boys, it's called precocious puberty. This has happened throughout history, but usually due to glandular disorders or a tumor pressing on the pituitary gland. Some scientists believe precocious puberty is actually getting more common. The age of menarche, or first menstruation, has gotten younger by 4 months every decade for every social, economic, ethnic, and racial group from the mid-1800s until the 1960s, and doctors aren't sure why. Theories propose it could be improved health, nutrition, obesity, or even environmental factors like plastic chemicals, smoking, family structure. Studies have even found emotional stress, like when a girl has a depressed father, or a child is adopted into a foreign country, or a child is exposed to war, can all cause early onset puberty. So many things. I mean, to be honest, no one really knows why this happens. We just know it is happening for both boys and girls. We have a video explaining some of the theories if you want to know more, but today we wanted to know why it matters. It turns out that puberty, and precocious puberty, can cause some pretty serious side effects because puberty is not just one thing. Instead, it's a whole series of changes to the body over time. Puberty is our biology setting us up for sexual maturity, offspring creation, and adulthood. So if it starts earlier, that will affect the rest of the kid's life. For example, our bones have growth plates. During puberty, kids get a growth spurt. But if that spurt starts earlier, like at age 6 instead of a few years later, the bones will grow and then stop, causing the person to be shorter. That's right, early puberty causes short stature. On top of that, the earlier onset can change how the child sees their chronological peers, as they may more closely identify with biological peers who may be older. This loss of childhood, as it was referred to in some of the research I read, can cause children to become more sexually active at a younger age, abuse alcohol or tobacco, have lower academic achievement and delinquency, and put the kids at a higher risk for developing depression. On top of that, they could develop eating disorders because puberty often causes weight gain, and puberty literally has been shown to make girls more cognizant of the relationship between diet, exercise, and weight. There are even more serious risks, like adult-onset asthma, type 2 diabetes, and breast cancer. Even though no one really knows entirely why this trend is happening, it's important to note, physically maturing does not mean a child is prepared for adulthood mentally. Yes, the brain is changing during puberty as well as the body, but the rational part of the brain, it doesn't stop developing until age 25. People are people, and we can't always control our biology, but we can control our social reactions to it. So keeping open and honest communication will go a long way to helping young adults adjust. It is the new normal. It's nothing to be ashamed of, and increasing awareness and acceptance while scientists do more research on why it's happening will help everyone understand it better. We hope. Knowing yourself and your body can be incredibly empowering. TLC has this show called I Am Jazz about a transgender teen who has a whole different picture of the regular drama of going through adolescence. You can watch it now by downloading TLC Go. The app will let you watch all the episodes of that and a bunch of other TLC shows right on your phone or tablet. Check out the app with the link in the description. And if you want to know a bit more about why all this early puberty stuff might be happening, check out this video. Other experts weighed in, claiming obesity was unlikely to be the only cause, and that where girls live and how much meat and dairy they have in their diet will also affect puberty onset. Even family stress has changed pubertal timing. Do you remember going through puberty? What was the worst part for you? I kept getting like giant zits right on my nose. It was the worst. Let us know in the comments. Make sure you subscribe for more DNews, and thanks for watching.
So the biological changes of puberty lead to new emotions and attitudes during adolescence, and the hormones associated with puberty facilitate attraction, as well as the hormone also plays a role in facilitating attraction. So teens during adolescence, like I mentioned, are finding their identity, and they also start to psychologically distance themselves from parents as they move into towards adulthood. So teens are not just preoccupied with sex, but they often have very meaningful love relationships. Teen years are when most people do become sexually active, and half of all teens report being in a romantic relationship. By the age of 16, teens are communicating with romantic partners more than family, friends, or siblings, according to research. And these romantic partnerships are characterized by caring, friendship, and companionship, not just sexual behavior. So, the most accurate predictor of first intercourse is actually if a teen is in fact in a romantic relationship. 35% of males and 86% of females say they had their first intercourse because of affection for the romantic partner. So, these romantic relationships are incredibly important to development. They help the teen find their identity and help them to gain an understanding of intimacy. So we're going to watch a video clip now from a professor at Harvard that discusses how in our culture we don't necessarily do a great job communicating to our adolescents and children about what love is and how to handle these romantic relationships. And I couldn't agree with him more. So let's take a look.
I want to talk to you today about a huge problem that I don't think we talk about in our culture, and that is our miserable, epic failure to prepare young people for love, for romantic love. Freud says there are two important things in life. One is work and the other is love. We have huge industries, spend billions of dollars, many institutions prepare students, young people for work. We do nothing to prepare them for love. Probably the most important thing they will do in their lives. Our failure has huge financial costs and it has huge emotional costs. Financial, of course, in divorce, in domestic abuse, in mediation, and many other kinds of problems. We have sex ed in this country, but it is either abstinence or disaster prevention, how not to get pregnant and how not to get STDs. I think parents often feel disabled in this conversation as well, often because they feel like they failed in their own love relationships. The great majority of parents in this country don't feel like they've had meaningful, lasting, successful love relationships. So we have created this vacuum. We fuss a lot about the sex talk. We do not fuss about a far more important talk, which is how do we talk to our children about the courage and subtlety and discipline and tenderness and tough-mindedness it really takes to love someone else. There are, I think, 3 or 4 challenges to this. I just want to mention a couple. One is confusion about what love is in our culture. If I were to ask you to pause in your flow of feeling for someone else and say, where in that flow of feeling do I stop and say, that is love? I think we would all pause in very different places. We mean very different things by this word. We are using one word to describe a whole array of very different feelings. And I think there's a danger in that. And one of the dangers is that we conflate attraction with love. We can conflate infatuation with love, and those are dangerous misconceptions for young people. I also think that we are talking about love differently at points in time, that the kind of love I have for my wife now is very different than the kind of love I had for her on our wedding day. And there's a problem. My love for my wife now is about history primarily. My love on our wedding day was about imagination. And there's a problem with history talking to imagination. Things are lost in translation, and we're having trouble talking to younger adults and young people about the many layers and depths of deep, mature love in ways that are vibrant and compelling to them. The last thing I just want to say is that I think mature love is very dramatic and very compelling. I watch Friday Night Lights, very mature, compelling love relationship in Friday Night Lights. I think that young people in our research are indicating they're desperate, they're passionate to talk about love. And in our TV and in our films, it would be wonderful to provide them adults with opportunities and children with opportunities to talk about this subtle, tender work of developing a love relationship with someone else. Thank you.
Okay, so for lecture activity 1, I would like you to think about if you had a child or if you do have a child, what you will or have told them about love relationships that you think is very educational and important to their development. So if there's one thing that you would tell your child about love relationships that you think would educate and prepare them for romantic relationships once they're in adolescence or early adulthood, what would that be? So respond to that question in 2 to 3 sentences for lecture activity 1. So studies show that 75% of gay, lesbian, and bisexual students are being harassed and or bullied at school. They receive slurs like faggot and dyke. Virtually all students have heard the phrase, "that is so gay," in describing something unpleasant. 1 in 5 homosexual students report being physically assaulted because of their sexual orientation, and these findings contribute to the fact that homosexual students are more likely to skip school or perform lower academically. So many homosexual teens take a different sexual development path. They may have same-sex sexual experiences but date less, and this may be due to a lower acceptance of homosexual dating by their friends, family, society, neighborhood, school. And many date opposite sex peers to cover up their orientation or to gain clarity about it. So many schools are trying to create safer environments for these teens by setting up anti-gay bullying policies, having gay-straight alliance clubs, identifying certain faculty as allies, and including discussions of homosexuality in curriculum. So let's watch a video now on a study about the importance of high schools having gay-straight alliances.
Gay-straight alliances are student-led clubs that share the common goal of creating accepting atmospheres in schools, mainly high schools, for all students regardless of their sexual orientation or gender expression. We found that students who attend schools with gay-straight alliances compared to students who attend schools that do not have gay-straight alliances reported lower levels of homophobic victimization, feeling fear for their personal safety, and hearing homophobic slurs. The alliance part is important in terms of finding allies to promote respect for individuals of all sexual orientations and all gender expressions. It sends a message that LGBTQ youth are supported by their straight allies, and hopefully that message is received by the other straight youth in schools. LGBTQ youth are at an increased risk of school-based victimization and negative mental health outcomes such as substance use, depression, poor academic performance, suicidal ideation, or suicide attempts. And gay-straight alliances are one possible answer to addressing those risks. The next steps that my co-author and I have for this project is to look at the mental health outcomes. We already examined victimization outcomes, and now we want to examine mental health outcomes such as suicidality, which is suicidal thoughts or attempts, substance use, and depression. And then we want to link those to victimization, with the hypothesis that schools that have gay-straight alliances will have lower rates of homophobic victimization, and then in turn, the LGBTQ youth who attend those schools will have better mental health outcomes.
In terms of the beginnings of sexual activity, the average age of first intercourse is between 15 and 17 years old for both boys and girls. 35% have had sex by grade 9, and 60% report having sex by grade 12. These numbers are somewhat higher for African Americans than Hispanics and Caucasians. These findings are based on self-reports by teens, so the actual numbers could actually be higher or lower. But 11% report having engaged in anal sex with an opposite-sex person, and 3% of males had engaged in anal sex with another male. 12% of high school females and 18% of males said that they had 4 sexual partners in their life, and 64% of males and 55% of females had engaged in mutual masturbation during high school. In terms of teen oral sex, 55% of high school students report having engaged in oral sex. Some students of abstinence-only programs reported substituting intercourse for oral sex. And many teens see oral sex as a way of remaining a virgin but satisfying sexual needs. Many teens think that oral sex is safe sex and therefore do not use protection. And studies show that for 75% of teens, oral sex happens within 6 months after the first intercourse. In terms of teen pregnancy, it's actually on the decline due to contraceptives, not due to abortions, as some think, since abortion rates have fallen also. Over 400,000 teen girls still become pregnant yearly, and usually these are from accidents that do not lead to healthy, happy outcomes. In other words, these are not planned pregnancies. So 50% of teen moms do not receive a diploma by the age of 22. And teens who are depressed are actually more likely to have an accidental pregnancy. They could either be looking for acceptance or they could be abusing drugs, and these factors can lead to risky sexual behaviors. So let's watch a video now on whether or not shows like Teen Mom or 16 and Pregnant glamorize teen pregnancy or help to prevent and lower teen pregnancy.
Does 16 and pregnant make you want to be 16 and pregnant, or does it make you 16 and mortified? Hey everyone, Lacey Green here for DNews. The creator of the shows 16 and Pregnant and Teen Mom have said that their shows are one of the best public service campaigns to address teen pregnancy. That is no small claim. The shows follow the social, emotional, logistical, and financial struggles of teen mothers and sometimes the fathers as they figure out how to navigate their lives as new young parents. For a while, sex educators and social scientists have wondered, do these reality shows make teen pregnancy seem cool? Or is it a cautionary tale that could actually prevent teens from getting pregnant before they're ready? This week, two completely conflicting studies came out, one right after the other, tackling this question. The first study found that it's probably not the great form of birth control its creators make it out to be. The study, which was published in the Journal of Mass Communication and Society, found that heavy viewers hold glamorized views of teen pregnancy. For instance, they were more likely to think that teen moms have a lot of time to themselves, that they have a good amount of money, and can easily graduate high school or college. The reality, of course, is that teen moms in the show are reality stars, so they do have a more glamorous life than normal. Meanwhile, teen moms in the real world make an average of $6,500 a year over the first 15 years of parenthood, and about half of them are unable to get their high school diploma. The researchers believe that because of these unrealistic expectations, teens might be less likely to use birth control because, after all, would it really be so bad to have a baby? The actual safer sex practices of the participants weren't studied, though. The other study, which is really interesting to me, found the opposite. Peeps, this is whack, but in a good way. The National Bureau of Economic Research is saying that 16 and Pregnant is directly responsible for preventing as many as 20,000 teen births in 2010. How do they know that? The researchers looked at the teen birth statistics and the areas where there are high concentrations of people watching MTV. In those areas with high viewership, the teen birth rate started to decline slightly right as the shows first took off in 2009. They also looked at Google Analytics and social media trends and found that whenever the show was being broadcast, searches about contraception spiked. As of 1991, 62 out of every 1,000 teen girls gave birth. By 2007, it had dropped to 42, and by 2012, it had fallen to 29 out of every 1,000. So the study estimates the show may have impacted about a third of the drop starting in 2010. The study suggests that the show really does make teenagers more proactive about avoiding pregnancy, not more likely to take risks with it. They also think that part of the effect is that they air out the taboo subject on national television, which helps start tough conversations that ultimately prevent teen pregnancy, which is pretty cool, huh? Thanks for joining me for DNews, folks. What do you think about the shows? Do you think they make teen pregnancy seem more or less desirable? Let me know down below, and we'll catch you next time.
All right, for lecture activity 2, I'd like for you to tell me what you think. Do you think shows like Teen Mom or 16 and Pregnant or any reality shows depicting teenagers being parents, do you think that they glamorize teen pregnancy, or do you think that they help to educate people and ultimately decrease teen pregnancy? So respond to that question in 2 to 3 sentences for lecture activity number 2. So technology like social networks, social media, dating websites, etc., have drastically changed dating, relationships, and sexuality in the last 15 years. Some of the perks of these types of social networks is that they allow socially awkward teens to develop skills in a somewhat safe and sometimes anonymous environment. But some people fear that developing social skills online actually harms face-to-face relationships, but research does not support this. In fact, recent research has found numerous social benefits to social networking. However, there is danger when people online lie about who they are, and it is true that there are sexual predators that use social networks to track, find, and plot against their sexual prey. So let's watch a video clip on how technology is changing sexuality, dating, and relationships.
Every morning when the sun peeks through my blinds, I wake up and hold my phone an inch away from my face to check Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Tumblr. Being in the loop of these social worlds keeps us powerfully attached to our devices. A recent poll found that American adults would rather live without a car, coffee, or sex than live without a smartphone. So how does our relationship with technology affect our relationship with other people? Last year, a study found that excessive Facebook use is damaging towards relationships, where higher use is correlated with a higher frequency of feelings of jealousy and Facebook-related conflict. Our use of technology and devices is on the rise, and it does change the way couples of all ages communicate, show affection, and share special moments. Is it for better or worse?
Or is it better and worse?
That's Emily from Blink Pop Shift.
Once our bodies are satisfied, once we have the whole food and water, safety and shelter thing figured out, our next big need is love. We need to feel like we belong to a family and a friend group and a partnership. But is our technological skin bringing us together or distracting us from real connection? It's not clean or easy, but the answer is a bit of both.
And it means different things to different people. How you use your smartphone depends on your attachment style in relationships. One study found that a greater use of social network apps was positively associated with intimacy and support for people with higher attachment anxiety. So it seems like there's a feedback loop. People with more attachment anxiety in relationships alleviate this by using their phone to seek more contact and intimacy from their partner, which leads to more of an attachment to their partner and maybe even to their phones themselves.
But personalization also contributes to our attachment. Our phones become repositories of our contacts, of our photos and messages, of our memories. They contain the record, a proof of love that we can go back to and reread. Because we use them to tell our stories, our phones become emblems of social life, not merely inert tools for enabling it.
And so often it's these handhelds and technology that's seen as the victim. Mobile phone addiction ruining relationships. 9 ways technology can ruin your relationship. Technology overload can ruin relationships. Expert. How texting can ruin relationships. Sure, higher Facebook use leads to more feelings of jealousy in relationships and Facebook-related conflict. But feelings aside, surely excessive bacon consumption would lead to more bacon-related conflict, and excessive Game of Thrones consumption would lead to more Game of Thrones-related conflict. In a recent study, only 10% of married or committed internet users say the internet's had a major impact on their relationship. 17% said it had a minor impact, and 74% said it had no real impact at all, or that the impact was positive. The internet and social media and smartphone and apps do change the way we communicate, but they don't ruin relationships. They're tools that enable your behavior, whether that's good or bad. It's not technology. It's you.
We're not so much addicted to our devices as we are to each other and the quantization of those interactions. And we've invented ways around the previous boundaries to social interaction, geography and time.
Jump over to Blink Pop Shift, where Emily has a look at the social tech of old and asks if things are really all that different. Let us know what you think about relationships and technology in the comments. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Braincraft for a new video every other week.
As teens enter college, they become considered adults, and sexuality becomes more prevalent. STIs are a major problem in this age group and on college campuses. In fact, they have the highest rate of infection amongst any age group. 86% of college students use contraception, but mostly use only the pill. Research shows that most college students do not use condoms. 25% of college students report having 6 or more partners. HIV and AIDS are not really rampant among college students, but infection is possible. However, the most common STIs are chlamydia, herpes, and HPV. People often don't get tested for STIs, and when we ask why, they say they are scared. But research found that only 7% of tests on college students actually come back positive for an STI. There is an alcohol-sex link in college students, and what that means is that we see students engaging in more risky sexual behavior such as no protection, casual sex, or multiple partners when they are drunk. And if a person is drunk and unable to consent, then penetration is considered rape. A person might not be able to consent if they are what's often referred to as being blackout drunk. So let's watch a video clip now on what happens when a person drinks so much that they black out.
It's St. Patrick's Day weekend, everybody! It's time to celebrate the work of St. Patrick, who converted the Irish from paganism to Catholicism. In America, this means getting medievally blackout wasted, I think. Howdy, Irish and non-Irish and Irish wannabes and everybody else. Trace here for D News with some drunk science. Now there's drunk and then there's blackout drunk. Those are the times when you're so bombed that you literally have no memory of anything that you did or said. A whole chunk of time is just lost. Count yourself lucky if this has never happened to you, but why does this even happen? First, let's talk about how memories are made. Scientists aren't exactly sure, but they think it has to do with the hippocampus. On a normal day, the synapses of your brain communicate with each other to build your experiences. It's a chemical process pulling in information from your senses, your experiences, and your feelings at the time, all folded into the cells of your gray matter. Your cells communicate with each other using a neurotransmitter chemical called glutamate. Glutamate helps bridge the synaptic gap between brain cells so memories can be stored and accessed. But alcohol is a toxin that affects that glutamate. See where I'm going here? According to a study in the journal Alcoholism, Clinical and Experimental Research, functional MRI scans of drunk students found our brains, once intoxicated, increase blood flow to the parts that control attention and cognitive functioning, as well as the parts that create memory. As the blood becomes more and more saturated with alcohol, females will begin to black out, and then males. Blackouts start at blood alcohol levels of around 0.15. During blackout, or drug-induced brain dysfunction as it's called medically, the hippocampus stops writing memories. Basically, our 20 to 30 seconds of short-term memory gets full and it resets, and that's all we got. You didn't forget. You weren't even recording, dude! You could ask a blackout drunk person about a story from their childhood, but ask them what happened a few minutes ago? They'd have no idea. A blacked out person is akin to being a walking, talking, unconscious person. Sometimes blackouts let fragments of memories through, but they aren't with all the senses, thoughts, and experiences, and instead, they're just little bits. When we ask our friends what happened last night, we are extremely vulnerable to suggestion. Those memories were never actually written down, but since the brain is a glutton for context, you will create memories from the stories your friends are telling. It might seem like a lot of people have blackout nights, but really only 40% of college students have ever blacked out. If you do experience them, you're more likely to fall back into them if you drink heavily on a daily basis. Research from the 1940s did find that alcoholism and blackouts were correlated, but since then, we've known that there's no causation. Newer research says some people are more susceptible based on body and brain chemistry, weight, sex, and so on. Anyone can have a blackout if they drink too much, but if they happen too often, it can really mess up your brain chemistry and potentially cause long-term damage, not to mention, bad decision making. So if you want to avoid blackouts, don't drink so fast. Your body can metabolize 1 drink an hour, and so, go get your buzz on, but don't get crazy. Celebrate St. Patrick's Day responsibly, everybody. Cilantro. What are you doing for the largest Irish-American holiday? Meeting up with other D News fans to talk science at the pub? Tell us about it below and subscribe. Hey, maybe you're drunk already. If so, why not click that little like button? You like this, right?
Generally, adults view intimate relationships differently than teens. Research shows that adults prefer their relationships as adults over their relationships in their teen years. They find them to be more mutually supportive, have more trust, and more stability. One of the things that's interesting to look at is this idea of cohabitation, which is living together as if you're married without legally married. The majority of couples do actually live together before getting married. In 60 million couples living together, 6.8 million are actually unmarried. So why are people cohabitating now more than ever before? Scientists and psychologists argue that maybe it's to pursue their personal and professional goals. Maybe it's because they have seen more divorce. Native Americans and African Americans are more likely to cohabitate than any other racial group. And within 5 years, 40% of cohabitating couples will break up and 55% will actually get married. 40% of children will live with a cohabitating couple at some point in their lives. And research suggests that kids of cohabitating couples are more likely to develop behavioral and emotional problems than kids with married parents. Why is this? It could be due to step parents. Their parents might have attachment issues, which could be why they aren't married in the first place. But research shows that people who cohabitate are actually more likely to get divorced. And some psychologists argue that this could be due to the attitudes cohabitators have towards marriage in the first place. Perhaps they don't take it as seriously, which is why they're willing to cohabitate, which is also why they're willing to get divorced. However, there is conflicting research on this, so let's watch a video now that argues for both sides of the cohabitation debate.
900 times more people are living together before getting married now than there were in the 1960s.
It's the end of family values, Lacey.
It's also the end of being a slob in your 20s. A moment of silence.
You don't have to leave being a slob behind.
Hey everyone, Lacey and Anthony here, and we've got a burning question. Should you live with someone before you get married?
Of course, everyone and their mom has their own opinion on this. My mother definitely has an opinion on this. And that includes scientists. For decades, marriage therapists, advice columnists, and other fancy people have touted the perspective that cohabitation results in doomsday for your relationship.
Does it really though? More recent studies are finding that it might not be so simple as living together first equals divorce. A new study being published next month in the Journal of Marriage and Family debunks this long-standing relationship myth and finds that moving in together doesn't contribute to divorce. But you know what does? Age.
More specifically, the age that you are when you move in together, or the age that you get married. In older studies, scientists compared groups of people who moved in first with those who didn't, without actually taking into account the ages of the participants. And that cast cohabitation in a bad light. But when the age was added to the equation, boom, clear pattern emerges. That's big data. Nate Silver, everybody.
The fact that getting married young results in higher rates of divorce is old news, so this study finding that moving in together is the same shouldn't be too much of a shocker. The lead researcher, Dr. Ariel Cooperberg, says increased rates of divorce happen because young people are taking on roles that they're not quite ready for. They found that the risk increases with marriage or cohabitation before the age of 23.
Which also happens to be right around the age that the brain starts to fully develop.
Fancy that, it's almost like these things are all connected.
You know, I can't imagine marrying somebody without living with them first to make sure that we are compatible domestically, like we like to keep our vinyl toys in the same place and we stack our to-go containers in the same corner of the living room.
It's actually really important.
Yeah.
I heard that.
Do we leave the same amount of hair in the bathroom for weeks on end without picking it up?
Yeah, so in my relationship, I feel kind of the same way, but I am slightly less gung-ho now that I have actually moved in with someone. I don't regret moving in, but I think you gotta really think about it before you do it. Even if you're super serious and it makes sense financially, because once you're in a lease, I mean, it's not a marriage contract, but it's still a huge pain to get out of if you need to.
That's true, and some psychologists describe something called sunk cost fallacy. We talked about this before in my video about the tricks that your brain plays on you. The more you invest in a relationship, the more you invest in anything, the harder it is to put your foot down when it's time to part ways. So some cohabitating couples might find sliding into married life more palatable than going through the pain of being without each other, splitting belongings, moving out, starting over. It's scary.
It's a total pain. Man, we are downers today, aren't we?
Cohabitate before marriage, but never cohabitate with anyone. Spend your life alone.
Perfect.
It's easier. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, that's
Great.
exactly what we're saying. What do you guys think? Let us know down below, and we'll see you soon with more science updates.
It's science. Spend your life alone.
Okay, for lecture activity 3, I would like for you to tell me where you stand on the cohabitation debate. Do you think that couples should live together before marriage or not? So if you could respond to that question in 2 to 3 sentences, that would be perfect for lecture activity number 3. So in terms of marriage, 90% of heterosexual American adults will actually get married. However, couples are waiting longer than ever before to get married. In the 1980s, the average age of marriage was 25 years old for men and 22 years old for women. Now it's 28 for men and 26 for women. 27% of same-sex couples perceive themselves as married, although they might not have an actual marriage certificate. So in terms of sexual behavior in marriage, 20% of married couples say they have sex between 3 and 16 times per month. 12% have sex more than 4 times per week. 20% report having sex 2 to 3 times per week. And 25% report having sex 1 time per week. The statistics are not just limited to coitus, however. These do include other sexual activities. Research does show that married couples that are sexually satisfied are happier than married couples that are not. And other factors in a happy marriage include shared goals, mutual respect, shared recreational activity, frequency of orgasm and sex, sexual experimentation, and religious beliefs. A study found that when a person is getting less sex than they need, they are less satisfied with their marriage. In terms of emotional satisfaction, 49% of men say that they are, 42% of women say that they are emotionally satisfied, and in terms of physical satisfaction, 52% of married men say that they're physically satisfied, and 49% of married women say that they are physically satisfied. However, there are people that have sexual problems in adulthood. They do become more likely as we age, but they're totally manageable and not the end of a satisfying sex life. Some of these sexual problems can be due to menopause, which is the normal gradual change in a woman's life that typically occurs between the ages of 45 and 55, when the ovaries produce decreasing amounts of female hormones and the menstrual periods cease. Menopause can cause low sexual desire, sexual functioning, and overall mood. In most cases, frequency of sex does decline, but desire and enjoyment does not. So let's watch a video now of Jimmy Kimmel asking married couples how often they have sex.
Somebody did a study about the sex lives of married people. They concluded that the happiest couples have sex an average of 4 times a month, which it seems, I don't know, it seems a little bit low, right? So I thought it would be fun to ask some couples here wandering around on Hollywood Boulevard how, you know, what their number is. Well, let's go outside to my cousin Sal now. Now, hey, Sal and I should say, hi, cousin Sal.
How you doing?
We have a friend who's been married for, I think, more than 10 years. He claims he and his wife have sex. How often did he say, Sal?
Oh, Dan Sanborn?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He said 4 times a week.
4 times a week, which is 16 times a month, which I think you should go to prison for that, right?
Jimmy, I don't believe him. He's already got 6 kids, and he's balding worse than I am. So he's a fibber, ask me.
Well, again, we shouldn't mention his name. No. Oh, wait, you already did. So, but anyway, let's bring in our first couple. Now, this couple has no idea what I'm going to ask them. They've just been asked to stop and answer a question. And, okay, where are they? Okay, there we are. Okay, hi, what's your name?
Hi, Karen Pierce.
And her husband, Rob?
And I'm sorry, what's your name?
Rob Pierce.
Where are you from, Karen and Rob?
Owensboro, Kentucky.
Oh, wow. Are you here on vacation?
Yes.
Have you been robbed yet?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Okay, good. Yes, yes. How long have you been together, may I ask?
Been married 15 years. We dated, we were high school sweethearts, so dated 5 years before that.
Oh, wow. So you guys are probably really sick of each other's bodies, yes? All right, I'm going to ask you a question. Don't answer it aloud. I want you to write the answer down. We're going to give you paper. Let's put you in position so you can't see each other's answers. Don't reveal your answer until I ask you to, okay? All right. The question is, how many times per month, on average, do you have sex? All right? So just go ahead and write it down. Don't think about it too much. Just, yeah, okay, figure it out. All right. So Karen's writing, well, looks like 3 digits Karen is writing. Rob, what are you up to? Karen, are you drawing a diagram of how you do it? What's going on there? All right, we're going to start with Rob. Rob, show us your number. Rob says 5, all right? And Karen says 5'8". Wow. All right, thank you. Hey, guys, Cousin Sal has a lovely gift for you. Cousin Sal, what do you have for
Yes, I have undies for 2, so you can share those. That's nice.
Oh, that's nice. You can wear those on the plane home. All right, nice to meet you guys. Let's bring in one more couple and see what's going on. And now this couple has not been listening in. They don't know. You guys didn't hear. Oh, you don't have headphones on, so you literally can't hear me now. Yeah. Okay, well, very, very careful. Hi, what's your name?
Teresa.
Hi, Teresa.
Fine, and you?
And what's your husband? Is this your husband?
It better be. David.
David and Teresa. Now, did you guys intentionally wear the same shirt today, or was that an accident?
Accident.
An accident. And wow, how about that? You wound up on TV. How long have you been married?
7 years.
7 years, and it's been good, I assume? You're still vacationing together?
Yes.
Where are you from?
Cincinnati. Ohio.
Cincinnati, Ohio. Hence the red, I guess. Okay. I'm going to ask you a question. We're going to put you in a position where you can't see each other's answers on either side of that wall. Don't answer it aloud. I'd just like you to write the answer down, be honest, and the question is, how many times per month on average do you have sex? Okay? Teresa is writing her number. David is writing his. All right, Teresa's now changing her number. Teresa, I meant with David, okay? So, hi, guys. Oh, they're looking at your number with envy. All right, Teresa, show us your number. Your number is 5. What was the original thing, a drawing of the planet?
You had a 0 originally.
Oh, really? 5, all right. And David, your number is?
What?
12.
It's okay, babe.
I have very bad news. David is cheating on you. What? Wait a minute. One of you can't count is what's happening here. That's quite a discrepancy. David, are you counting your alone time here or what?
Could be.
You might be. All right, well, we do have a gift for you.
And condoms for you. Here's a couple.
We got some condoms, yes, and
yeah, here's a basket.
And a big basket. Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Thanks for all right, there you go. Thanks for playing. Hi, I'm Jimmy Kimmel. If you like that, click the subscribe button below, and good things will happen forever.
All right, that is it for Chapter 12. Please submit your lecture activities and don't forget to complete the assignments associated with this chapter. We will see you for the next one. Have a great day.